Anime is weird.
Dragon Ball Z didn't premiere for most Western audiences until 1995, approximately 7 years after the series had originally begun airing in its native Japan. And while that left English-speaking fans behind the curve on the storyline, it did position Goku and company to be among the biggest things in pop culture at the same moment when internet access was first going mainstream. As a result, the internet has long been almost as full of Dragon Ball as it is of cats. The information superhighway is positively littered with DBZ fanfics, abridged versions, memes, quotes, fandom theories, hypothetical battles, and accusations that the mythology behind the powers of the series' main characters incorporates a thinly concealed endorsement of the Nazi master race ideology? Yeah, have you heard this one? It doesn't get the same level of traction as some other problematic stuff in old cartoons references, but yeah, this is a thing that's hovered over the series pretty much as long as it's been out. To the extent that some geek culture urban legends theorize that one of the reasons the show took so long to come to the US, remained under-merchandised for a long time, and never generated a proper live-action film. Sound ridiculous? It pretty much is, but it didn't come out of nowhere. So what are people on about exactly? Well, the short version is that in case you're not up on your 20th century history, the Nazis didn't just want to conquer the planet in World War II. Adolf Hitler and many of his inner circle believed that they and other Germans were descendants of a long-lost superior master race called Aryans, identifiable by genetic traits like blonde hair and blue eyes, and that by systematically wiping out inferior races, they could bring that Aryan bloodline back to prominence. Meanwhile, over in Dragon Ball Z, if you're not 100% up on the Dragon Ball mythos, in which case I assume all of this just looks like a bunch of Matrix code so far, characters who descend from an ancient race called the Saiyans train their bodies and minds in the martial arts to achieve a higher level of being called Super Saiyan, whose superhuman physical and spiritual strength manifests outwardly in the form of blonde hair and blue-green eyes. Huh. Yeah, that is kind of a when you look at it from the outside, in a strictly uncomfortable coincidence kind of way, since obviously Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama is A, said to have made the Super Saiyans blonde just so he and the other artists could have a break from coloring in all the black hair, and B, probably not a white supremacist because, you know, duh. But still, it's kind of hard not to think about it once you've seen it, to the extent that the releasers and translators of the series have even addressed it outright. In the non-canonical 1995 DBZ anime movie Fusion Reborn, Adolf Hitler himself appears unnamed as one of several dead supervillains escaped from hell. When Der Fuhrer has his first encounter with child Super Saiyans Goten and Trunks, the English dubbing team decided it was finally time to hang a lampshade on the issue.
No! Blonde hair, blue eyes, super strength? I should be recruiting them.
Anyway, here's what's going on. In the late 19th and early 20th century, haha, gotcha, it's a history episode, there was a lot of fringy scholarship going on of trying to determine what, if any, the true root races of humanity were, mainly as a reaction to people recognizing that earlier means of dividing up human ethnicity wasn't cutting it scientifically, but not yet wanting to admit that people weren't actually all that different from each other, and definitely not wanting to consider the possibility that the first humans might not have been, you know, white dudes. A popular obsession in this field was an ancient tribal linguistic group referred to in a small sampling of texts as Aryans. Now, early human language and tribe designation is a crazy deep field and we'd be here all fucking day, so shorter version, it was the name for one way of grouping one of the many early European and West Asian human tribes in the Eurasian steppes. In the 19th century, up through much of the early 20th, however, some scholars established a popular but now discredited theory that a specific Aryan race must have been the origin of all Proto-Europeans. Basically, they decided these quasi-mythic Aryans were white people version 1.0, and thus proof that Caucasians were just better than everyone else. Now, these wacko theories got swirled into the mix with another branch of fringe academia of the time, occultism, aka attempts to rediscover lost pre-Christian European religious practices. Helena Blavatsky and Henry Olcott, founders of the mid-1800s neo-pagan theosophical movement, which combined Western neo-pagan theories with spiritual history ideas loosely borrowed from Hindu texts, postulated that, I shit you not, Aryans were actually a genetically superior race of survivors from legendary lost civilizations like Atlantis, whose bloodline had been diluted by extended mixing with lesser races. No, really. And it was this kind of nonsense, coupled with a similar obsession with philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche's Superman or Übermensch ideal, that so fascinated Hitler and his inner circle. See, for all the bluster, the Nazi bigwigs weren't so much scholars of ancient history as they were a bunch of angry mythology geeks whose ideology about the Aryan master race sounds like somebody's shitty D&D campaign. But yeah, they really were aiming to remake humanity into a pure race of super powerful blonde blue-eyed demigod. And now I wonder if this has something to do with why they've decided that the really Super Saiyans now come in blue. But regardless, is there any actual connection between this goofy mythology that got millions of people killed and this goofy mythology that gave a generation of gym rats a lifelong inferiority complex? The answer isn't easy. See, remember how the two weirdos from a moment ago claimed to have adapted some of their oddball root race theories from Hindu spiritualism? Well, they were specifically talking about a then-contemporary Hindu reform movement stressing an extremely literal focus on the ancient Vedas text called Arya Samaj. And yes, the name is obliquely referencing the same ancient Aryan tribal linguistic group, but in an entirely different context. Like I said, we'd be here all fucking day. In any case, the Vedas include some incredibly ancient writings to the point that some clear parallels and maybe even proxies can be found to other ancient religious texts, stories, and, for lack of a better word, legends, with ties to early human humanity in the Eastern and Middle Eastern world. Why should that matter? Well, Dragon Ball Z is a sequel series mainly concerned with having now adult versions of Goku and pals engaged in broad parodies of superhero stories. Original Dragon Ball, as fans of Death Battle already know, was a sci-fi comedy takeoff on the epic Chinese classical novel Journey to the West, with the child Goku being a stand-in for Journey's most popular mythic figure, Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. Funny thing about that, Journey into the West's main story point is a quest by a Chinese monk traveling through the rest of Asia and the Mideast to reach India in order to bring the scriptures and teachings of Buddhism to ancient China, and a growing number of scholars believe that many fixtures of Chinese folklore that originated in Journey are actually Chinese reworkings of Hindu deities and/or ancient Indian folklore, most prominently Sun Wukong being exceptionally similar to the Hindu deity Hanuman. So yes, Goku may in fact be a Japanese reimagining of a Chinese retooling of a Hindu deity whose traditions are likely ancient enough to have emerged around roughly the same time as the lingual ethnic designation Aryan, whatever the fuck it originally meant. Oh, and also, figures with white hair indicating old age but strong young bodies as avatars of either superhuman good or subhuman evil are very common throughout a lot of Asian mythology, so make of that what you will. Bottom line, no, Dragon Ball Z was not sending coded neo-Nazi messages. That's stupid, especially since the Nazi Aryan thing was all about racial purity, and in Dragon Ball, Goku and Vegeta's mixed-race children all become Super Saiyans more easily than they did, and are of equal if not proportionally greater strength. Also, I know a lot of Western anime fans still have trouble with this, but
Most of these people are supposed to be or look Japanese.
yes, even the two who are technically from outer space. And while we're here, did you know that the RZA, leader of the Wu-Tang Clan, famous for infusing Eastern martial arts philosophy into the hip-hop genre, says in his philosophical book The Tao of Wu that to him, Dragon Ball Z and the Saiyan mythology in particular represents the journey of the black man in America? So yeah, there's also that. And yet it's kind of remarkable that this genocidal maniac and this manga artist both landed on the same basic visual shorthand for ancient lost race of strong guys in what works out to be an entirely disconnected context, in part by coincidence, but also perhaps in part because when it comes to legends and mythology, the further back you dig, we're all eternally dipping back into pretty much the same soup. If only that understanding could bring us together more often, instead of that other thing.
Hello.
Okay, that I have no explanation for.